How do we avoid spiritual numbness? Because I feel communities and people, we can become so numb that things that were unthinkable, things that were so sinful in our past starts to look normal all of a sudden. And it's when people start taking God for granted, taking the covenant for granted, and they stop protecting one another. That's when we start to see that breakdown in the spiritual health of a people, of a community, of these places that we are going to talk about, especially in Judges chapter 19, because we're going to unpack the Levite, the concubine, the violence at Gibeah, and how one horrifying night exposes the breakdown of Israel's moral life. And I'll give you one immediate action to help you tell the truth about sin before it hardens into denial in this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. If you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's get a little bit of context into the chapter. So, Judges chapter 19, again, is one of the most dark places in scriptures. It's one of the darkest chapters in all of scripture, because a Levite is going to retrieve his concubine. They lodge in Gibeah, and a mob surrounds the house demanding abuse, and the host offers horrific alternatives, and the concubine is abused throughout the night, and the Levite later dismembers her body to summon Israel's attention. The chapter, again, it's not trying to shock for its own sake, but it's showing what Israel looks like when there was no king, and when everyone does what is right in their own eyes. This is a tragic story of the Bible. And the whole nation is being put on trial by the violence that it has tolerated. Okay, so let's read verses 1 to 10. The focus here is going to be the Levite retrieving his concubine and delays in Gibeah. And my question for you is, why does the chapter begin with ordinary travel before plunging into horror? Verse 1, In those days when there was no king in Israel, a certain Levite residing in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim took to himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine became angry with him, and she went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah, and was there some 4 months. Then her husband set out after her to speak tenderly to her and bring her back. He had with him his servant and a couple of donkeys. When he reached her father's house, the young woman's father saw him and came with joy to meet him. His father-in-law, the young woman's father, made him stay, and he remained with him 3 days. So they ate and drank, and he stayed there. On the 4th day they got up early in the morning, and he prepared to go. But the young woman's father said to his son-in-law, Fortify yourself with a bit of food, and after that you may go. So the 2 men sat and ate and drank together, and the young woman's father said to the man, Why not spend the night and enjoy yourself? When the man got up to go, his father-in-law kept urging him until he spent the night there again. On the 5th day he got up early in the morning to leave, and the young woman's father said, Fortify yourself, and linger until the day declines. So the 2 of them ate. When the man with his concubine and his servant got up to leave, his father-in-law, the young woman's father, said to him, Look, the day has worn on until it is almost evening. Spend the night. See, the day has drawn to a close. Spend the night here and enjoy yourself. Tomorrow you can get up early in the morning for your journey and go home. But the man would not spend the night. He got up and departed and arrived opposite Jebus, that is, Jerusalem. He had with him a couple of saddled donkeys, and his concubine was with him. Alright, so biblical unlock number 1. Why does the chapter start with this sort of reunion instead of violence? So we see that the Levite retrieves his concubine, and there's some delays in Gibeah. And it's interesting because the horror that we're going to see later on in the chapter is introduced as a form of ordinary life. Not as a monster out of nowhere, it is actually subtle. It's going to enter quite subtly into the picture. And the Levite actually goes and speaks kindly to his concubine and brings her home. But the narrator keeps slowing down the pace so we feel how normal this is feeling. Okay, this is a normal sort of sounding beginning to this chapter, because evil is going to enter into what looks ordinary, and that's exactly what we're going to see. And the Levite, he keeps delaying, right? Why is he delaying? Because delay often looks like it's harmless until it's too late. He lingers, he eats, he drinks, and he keeps moving later than he should. And that's because the chapter is using the slow start to show that small choices can place people in danger even before the crisis arrives. So again, procrastinations, while you might think that this is a stretch, like, oh, procrastination is really going to cause the later violence that we see in this chapter, not necessarily, but it's going to set up the stage for something worse that comes on. Okay, let's read verses 11 to 21. The focus here is going to be the host offers shelter, the city appears hostile, and my question for you is, why is hospitality so central to the tragedy? Verse 11. When they were near Jebus, the day was far spent, and the servant said to his master, "Come now, let us turn aside to the city of the Jebusites, and spend the night in it." But his master said to him, "We will not turn aside into a city of foreigners, who do not belong to the people of Israel, but we will continue on to Gibeah." Then he said to his servant, "Come, let us try to reach one of these places and spend the night at Gibeah or at Ramah." So they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. They turned aside there to go in and spend the night at Gibeah. He went in and sat down in the open square of the city, but no one took them in to spend the night. Verse 16. Then at evening there was an old man coming from his work in the field. The man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was residing in Gibeah. The people of the place were Benjaminites. When the old man looked up and saw the wayfarer in the open square of the city, he said, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" He answered him, "We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, from which I come. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and I am going to my home. Nobody has offered to take me in. We have straw and fodder for our donkeys, with bread and wine for me and the woman and the young man along with us. Your servants need nothing more." The old man said, "Peace be to you. I will care for all your wants. Only do not spend the night in the square." So he brought him into his house and fed the donkey. They washed their feet and ate and drank. Okay, so this is interesting. What we're noticing here is that we see hospitality. It is quite interesting, right? So the old host is actually offering protection, but the city itself is dangerous. And what we notice, especially in the ancient Near East, to fail at hospitality is more than bad manners, right? It's actually like a breakdown of the covenant. And Gibeah is failing at one of the most basic signs of life with God, that is protecting the vulnerable guest. So vulnerable guest comes in, and Gibeah is failing at this particular aspect. And this is important because this is often a serious mark of righteousness, being able to provide for other people. What is also interesting here is that the men of the city, they behave quite outrageously, in the sense that, there's a complete moral inversion. The outsider is protected, while the covenant city itself is it's predatory. And that is a bit of a horror, because it's almost as if, and this is what I was talking about with the inversion, what should have been a safe place is actually now a dangerous place. And people who should know better, right, they're acting like Sodom and Gomorrah from what we've seen in Genesis. Although this is going to make a lot more sense when we read the final part of the chapter, verses 22 to 30. I must warn you, this is quite violent, and the Bible is recording one of the depths of human depravity that we will see in the biblical narrative. So let's read verses 22 to 30. While they were enjoying themselves, the men of the city, a perverse lot, surrounded the house and started pounding on the door. They said to the old man, the master of the house, "Bring out the man who came into your house, so that we may have intercourse with him." And the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Since this man is my guest, do not do this vile thing. Here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Ravish them and do whatever you want to them. But against this man do not do such a vile thing." But the men would not listen to him. So the man seized his concubine and put her out to them. They wantonly raped her and abused her all throughout the night until the morning. And as the dawn began to break, they let her go. As morning appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was until it was right. In the morning her master got up, opened the doors of the house, and when he went out to go on his way, there was the woman, his concubine, lying at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. "Get up," he said to her, "we are going." But there was no answer. Then he put her on the donkey, and the man set out for his home. When he had entered his house, he took a knife, and grasping his concubine, he cut her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. Then he commanded the men whom he sent, saying, "Thus shall you say to all the Israelites, has such a thing ever happened since the day that the Israelites came up from the land of Egypt until this day? Consider it, take counsel, and speak out." This is so drastic, so dreadful, and so unbelievably disgusting that it makes us want to take a second to stop and reflect upon the drastic nature, the depths of human depravity that we have just described is unbelievable. So why is it so dreadful? The scriptures are forcing us to see the depth, the foundation of Israel's corruption. The mob, they abuse the concubine throughout the night. She collapses at the door. Okay, then the chapter, it doesn't soften or romanticize this. It's showing us it is a witness against a society where sexual violence can occur and no one can stop it. So this is, when we read this, the first response we should have is utter disgust. We should be enraged by what we hear, because we must speak strongly against the abuse of the vulnerable, and this is one of the reasons why. But then, why does the Levite take her body and then later dismember it? This is one of the most disturbing acts in the entire Bible. Why does he do that? Well, it's to provoke outrage across the tribe. Again, his action is depraved, but there is a deeper message here. It is that the people have become so morally dead that this is the only way he feels that they can get their attention. But what he's done is equally depraved. So what is the point of all of this? Why do we need to hear this? The end, what we heard at the end, it's a summons to the whole nation of Israel that this city's crime, it is an indictment of the entire covenant people. When they lose their covenant order, the weak suffer first and suffer worst. And this is not a story that we can just ignore. It is something that we need to understand, that our identity can become monstrous if it's not placed in the Lord. Let's see how this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ. So Judges chapter 19 shows what happens when a people, they lose their morality. The vulnerable become crushed. The people become monstrous, and that's all that's left. That's the only way of life that is left. But in Christ, the answer is not denial, but it is redemption. Because Jesus, he enters the darkest places of human violence and shame, and he refuses to use the vulnerable to his own advantage, because he is the true protector. He is the faithful host, and he is the one who bears human sin without becoming sinful himself. This is why the Apostle Paul writes in his letter to the Romans, in Romans chapter 12, verse 21, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Do not become what you hate, and do not let evil set the terms of your response." Alright, so how can we understand this chapter in our everyday lives? I think the first thing is to remember where you are tempted to call something not that bad when it's actually quite serious. There are going to be situations where you feel like you need to back down, you need to fall back on your beliefs. And the thing is, the truth about God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And there are going to be people, vulnerable people, that you need to actively protect and support. And if you are tempted to call something not bad, even though you know deep down that it is, then you need to question, are you being like the people in Judges chapter 19 who are so acclimatized and accustomed to sin that they just let everything pass? Remember, without God, all things are permissible. And you need to recognize, where are those guardrails? Where are those moral guardrails that society is meant to have? Alright, so that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocked. We learned that Judges chapter 19 begins in ordinary life and then descends into horror. That the city's violence reveals a total collapse of the moral order. And the Levite's use of the body and dismembering it is itself part of the chapter's indictment. And that the chapter is meant to shock Israel awake, and it's not meant to leave the reader comfortable. Next time, we're going to move from the horror that we just witnessed in Judges chapter 19 to the national reckoning in Judges chapter 20. We're going to unpack Israel's assembly, the war at Gibeah, and how justice can still be pursued when the whole nation is shaken. You don't want to miss it. So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to rate the show and follow. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.